There have been some updates, I've got to say, are not positive. How mad is that? The authoritarianism knows no bounds. So last year, the Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a law banning what the Russian government calls child-free propaganda. I did a whole video about this at the time, and that's up on screen now. I've also linked it in the description if you want to check that video out. For context for this video, there have been some updates which I'm going to share with you, which I've got to say are not positive. The first story I wanted to get into was the fact that the first fine has been given out under this new law. To find out more about the story, let's start with the Kiev Independent. A 29-year-old woman in Russian-occupied Sevastopol was fined 50,000 rubles, which is about $500, for promoting the appeal of a child-free lifestyle on social media, local occupation authorities reported on January 31st. According to the local occupation authorities, the woman had been posting misanthropic content on her social media account and allegedly did not remove it after the law came into effect. So what this seems like to me, and we actually get confirmation later in the video, is that this woman was retroactively fined. She posted this stuff before the law was even put into effect, and the authorities went back through her feed, found something that she'd done which was legal presumably at the time, but has now become illegal, and because she hasn't taken it down, they've now given her a fine. So if anyone out there lives anywhere that Russia has influence, you might want to go back through your social media posts, or at the very least just be careful. So what did this woman post? So we can see on the Telegram channel of the Russian news outlet Agent's-Vault that this is at least some of the cited material. So let's go through each of these images one by one. So the first two images are just images of people or characters giving the middle finger. I'm not totally sure why these were included. All we know is they were included in evidence for this fine, and it's just a bunch of people putting the middle finger up. The third image we can see is a quote by film director Quentin Tarantino, which I actually couldn't find the original of anywhere, so I don't know if it's a quote that's falsely attributed to him, but either way, this is what was posted on this woman's account. The quote says, "My motto is make movies, not kids. Fuck those little snotty fuckers. I want to have fun." Obviously, this is not like the nicest, most eloquent quote ever. Is it something that you should be criminalized for? No. That got a fine. How mad is that? And I think it should just remind each of us in countries where we are generally free to express our views and how we feel that this is not a guarantee. The ability to express ourselves freely is something that we should be ever vigilant of and protect. Anyway, what does the general post from Agent's-Vault say on Telegram? And this is going to be a translation, so again, it's not going to be perfect, but the general message is going to be conveyed here. The first fine for propaganda of child-free created a risk of prosecution for arguments about the difficulties of motherhood and posts about holidays without children. So very quickly before we continue, this is actually interesting. So it's actually suggesting that the precedent that might be set by this fine is actually going to have shockwaves beyond what we may suspect, in that if there's a couple that just simply doesn't have children, are they going to be able to express themselves and show publicly that they are having fun in a life without children? This is insane. It's not them intentionally promoting not having children. This is just them showing their lives, and yet it could be seen and interpreted by the Russian authorities as promoting child-free propaganda. The authoritarianism knows no bounds. And also, like the post says, sharing the difficulties of being a mother. Now those who even decide to procreate but struggle a bit to raise their child, or just find the demands of parenthood somewhat imposing, are going to have to just sit down and shut up because they can't give parenthood a bed light. A Sevastopol court has fined a local resident 50,000 rubles under an article on propaganda of child-free, the city's police said. This is the first case when in Russia the article, which appeared in December last year, is punished. The reason for the prosecution were the girl's posts in a social media channel I'm not going to try and say the name of, with a quote from Quentin Tarantino and pictures where characters from various films and cartoons show the middle finger. If such decisions become the norm, even arguments that talk about the difficulties of motherhood will be banned, lawyers say. Details. The police reported about the court's decision in its Telegram channel. According to the report, employees on the Center E monitored the internet and found that the girl published misanthropic posts, including statements about the attractiveness of abandoning childbearing in favor of a child-free lifestyle. The posts in question were written before the ban on propaganda of child-free people came into force and were not deleted after December last year, the police report said. So this seems to suggest that they have some sort of group of people or agency actively trawling through the the internet trying to find people's posts about being child-free or just anything negative about procreation and then retroactively slapping fines on them. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more of these sorts of fines coming out. Who knows if they'll even be reported on if they become common enough. The press release contains a photograph of a girl with her face plastered over, as well as 3 screenshots. 2 of them are reposts from popular blogs. One is a selection of photos of stars giving the middle finger. The other is a quote attributed to Quentin Tarantino, "Making films, not children is my motto," and another screenshot shows a picture of a character from the animated series Rick and Morty giving the middle finger. In all of the images, the user's nickname, the address of her page, and the dates of publication are obscured, making it impossible to find the post and the heroine of the press release. This is the first case of a fine for propaganda of Childfree. OVD info lawyer Eva Levenberg and lawyer Alexandra Baeva confirmed to the agency. From the Interior Ministry's release, it is difficult to understand the law enforcer's logic, specifically how the demonstration of the middle finger or the quote are related to propaganda of Childfree, Baeva said, and how this connection is justified by the officers themselves. It would be interesting to see the agency interlocutor adds. However, it is already clear from this decision that the risk of being fined has arisen for opinions not necessarily related to a childless lifestyle. For example, for arguments about the difficulties of motherhood or statements about the advantages of traveling without children, Levenberg said. In the future, law enforcers may use some of the ideas from this case when bringing new cases, the lawyer said. At the same time, the courts are unlikely to rely on this decision when considering cases as they rely on the materials received, Levenberg said. Baeva believes that it is still difficult to speak about the final law enforcement practice. There used to be some time lag between the first cases and court practice. Because the protocols were written very poorly, methodologies were not developed. Such cases were not used to and could be sent for revision. So this is crazy. The Kiev Independent then adds a further complexity onto this story. The report from local occupation authorities does not clarify whether the woman was a Ukrainian resident of Sevastopol before the annexation, but Ukrainian citizens are frequently targeted by the occupying authorities. So it could be the case that this law has been brought into effect to suppress the expression of child-free ideas, but it could also be used and liberally interpreted to target specific members of society under the guise of it being about protecting procreation and traditional values. The second story I wanted to share is actually not a recent update, but it also has implications here. Back at the start of 2023, Human Rights Watch reported the following. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a law extending compulsory DNA data collection to millions of people yesterday. Anyone suspected of any crime will have their DNA collected, and those convicted or sentenced to administrative detention for a misdemeanor will have their DNA profile stored in a state database for life. This is the law in question. I'm popping it up on screen now, and Medusa has explained that this would indeed cover the spread of child-free propaganda. But yeah, this is scary stuff, and I hope it isn't foreshadowing things that we are potentially going to see outside of Russia as well. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this. Let me know if I've missed any updates or anything about these stories and you know more about them. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.